Friends, we made it to the book of Leviticus, and in today's podcast, we're talking about staying salty. God desires relationship with us, and that's why the book of Leviticus is here. It teaches us how to live in such a way to be in communion with God. You don't want to miss today's podcast. This is the moment you've been waiting for. We're diving into the book of Leviticus.
Oh, yeah.
Nathan, why is it that when people say Leviticus, people just start to tune out? They're looking at their Bible plans and reading for the year. And then it's like, oh, let me skip Leviticus. What is it that you think causes people to not embrace this book?
Well, in all truth, I think part of it is the fact that it's the common butt of preacher jokes, right? So we joke about it,
right.
that it's all the rules and regulations. And so we joke about who enjoyed their daily devotion time in Leviticus today, ha, ha, ha.
Right.
But the truth is, yes, there are some things that are a little difficult to plow through, but there's so much gold to mine. And I'm excited we're going to get a chance to do it together.
Me too. I've heard it said that it took God one day to take Israel out of Egypt and 40 years to take Egypt out of Israel.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. And so they're marching through the wilderness. They've got a good chunk of time ahead of them.
Oh, yeah.
They've created, according to God's plan, the tabernacle. In our last portion, we talked about Moses doing everything just as the Lord commanded, just as the Lord commanded, just as the Lord commanded. And Exodus ends with a little bit of a cliffhanger for me, because on one sense, God shows up. Verse 34 of Exodus 40, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Amazing, the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Again, it says in verse 35. But in verse 35, it says Moses was not able to enter. We just touched on it last week a little bit. God is holy. I'm reminded of the verse, who may ascend the hill of the Lord? He who has clean hands, pure heart, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. God desires to dwell with us, but we must be in a certain condition to dwell with him, or else we will explode. Like we won't make it. Yeah. And it's not because God is mean, it's because God is holy. Right. Maybe in seasons past, you talked about the sun. I think I remember you talking about this. Look, the sun is amazing. We need the sun for life. But if you get too close to the sun without being properly taken care of, you're going to disintegrate into nothing. Not because the sun is a bad thing, but because it's pure fire.
Yeah, it's powerful and it can't help it.
It's powerful and it can't help it.
Yeah.
So God knows. Yeah. He knows what's going to happen to people who come to him, but come to him in an improper way. They can't survive, not because God is mean, but because God is holy.
Yes.
And he is looking for men and women to be able to have interaction and fellowship with him, because he's a holy God. And come out from among them. Come out from among them and be ye holy as I am holy. This call to holiness, people will say, that's a bunch of legalistic nonsense. But what it is, holiness is beautiful. Bible talks about the beauty of holiness. Yes. But holiness has everything to do with God desiring to be with us, because that's who he is. Yes. We've had an open house our whole life. We just have simple rules for people who live with us. And we do not want this house defiled with evil things. Yeah. We just don't. I mean, you don't have to live here.
Sure.
But if you're going to come and live here, here's some rules. Yeah. And we want to welcome you. Yes. But as soon as you start defiling, we can't have you, not because we're mean, but because we want the sanctity of this house to remain a certain way. That's who God is.
That's who God is. And Scott, we're trying to learn how to relate. The people of Israel at this time in history are trying to learn how to relate to their God. Yeah. They've been slaves in a foreign land. They've been under the jurisdiction of false gods, right? And so now they're learning to relate to him rightly. And so God is in his kindness. I mean, think about this. You talk about it being unkind. It'd be super unkind if you didn't tell him how to do it.
Right.
Now that would be unkind.
That would be pretty unkind because there'd be people dropping dead nonstop.
And you wouldn't know why. And you wouldn't know what to do. How do you fix it? You know, I've heard it said, right, to be unclear is to be unkind, right? He is clearly explaining to them, I want relationship. That's the whole point of me bringing you out of slavery. I want relationship. That's the whole point of us having a tabernacle that I can dwell in because I'm pure holiness. There's a certain way it has to be set up. So now let me teach you how to relate to me in the offerings that you bring, the way that you do it, not because I'm this egomaniac, but because this is what it's like to relate to the God of the universe, you know? So it's his kindness. Some people call it boring or tedious. It's the kindness of the Lord.
I love that.
That's like, I want you to know my ways.
I love that.
So I'm going to show them to you.
I love that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Look, if we enlist into an army, and they say wake up every day at 5 a.m., you're not going to say, oh, my sergeant's so mean. He makes me wake up at 5 a.m. or wear these green khakis. Oh, I like muted colors. I want no. You wear what you wear because that's how they do it. You enlist into this army. Don't be saying, oh, you know, my commander was so legalistic or there were so many rules. It has nothing. Rules. I'm remembering something that the youth pastor at Brownsville used to say. Richard Crisco. I'm giving you a shout out, Richard. You should be watching. Rules without relationship brings rebellion. That the fruit of rules without relationship is going to end up in rebellion. Look, the people of Israel rebelled against God. God is looking for relationship. Yes. And when we see rules in the context of you're a good God, you want me to survive.
Yeah.
Give me the rules.
Yeah, show me what to do.
Show me what to do.
Right.
And let me do it. And woe to those of us and our own human sinful natures who say, I'm not doing that. There are people who've written God off because they've looked at this Bible as a ridiculous rule-keeping. It requires a ridiculous rule-keeping people. Well, I don't want to keep on blabbing. I've got these little issues with my skin. I got to have a procedure done to remove this thing right here. It's a little basal cell, non-malignant, but skin cancer.
Yeah.
And my doctor says, are you putting on sunscreen every day? Putting on sunscreen every day. Sometimes I'm not even in the sun.
Right.
But what they're saying is, listen, I want you every day to apply cream to your face and to protect your skin from the sun. Is it legalistic to wake up every day and do that? Oh, I'm not gonna conform to your legalistic. Exactly. But it's for our protection. That's how I see the book of Leviticus.
Well, and again, it's the kindness of the Lord saying, I don't want to just have these expectations of you and not tell you what they are.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that is like chaos, you know? Like you never know. Well, did I do it right? Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So, well,
right.
How am I supposed to know? Oh, you won't. We'll just find out. You know, you'll get incinerated. Like the Lord is, I want to show you how to do this. Now it tests our humility or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, we kind of harking back to where we just finished after the many weeks in the book of Exodus.
Yeah.
That Moses is one as a man of humility because he does not see his position as something that he can bargain with God. He's like, no, this is all about your way. I want you to have what you want for your people.
Yeah.
Man, when we lose sight of that, we're in trouble. And so Leviticus is giving these people an understanding of how to relate to God, and it starts with certain kinds of offerings.
I love it. So we're going through chapter 5. So chapters 1 through 3 are food offerings that really appease the Lord. Over and over and over again, we see a soothing aroma to the Lord, a soothing aroma to the Lord. Chapters 4 and 5 are purification offerings, which are for cleansing and for forgiveness. So let's just quickly dive into these first three offerings: the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the peace offering. And anything stand out to you about any of these offerings?
Well, all these unique offerings, this is the stuff that people can get bogged down in and just say like, well, I don't understand this. Why they have these different offerings? At the end of the day, if you understand that these are ways that they relate to the Lord. One thing I think is fascinating in chapter 2, when it talks about the grain offering, look at verse 13. It says, season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all of your offerings. Well, what I love about this is these things have to do with their fellowship with the Lord. What draws them close, what keeps them close, helps them stay engaged. And God is saying, always bring salt. Matter of fact, at the Shabbat table, oftentimes, the bread is seasoned with salt, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we have a salt. I just did that because we have a salt shaker that we season the bread with. And it says, it's a reminder that those offerings that were required to have salt, because it's a preserving agent. It's a purifying agent. It's a reminder of the covenant. And so God says, I want you to season your grain offerings with salt, the salt of the covenant. We look at the New Testament. What does Jesus, Yeshua, remind us? You're the salt of the earth, right? If the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything. It's to be thrown out, trampled by men. So the point is, we are to be a preserving agent. We are preserving the name of the Lord in the community.
I love it.
And those offerings have to be seasoned with salt. We are to be that salt that brings about the testimony.
I love that you brought that out. Check this out in chapter 1, verse 10. But if his offering is from the flock of the sheep or the goats, for a burnt offering, he shall offer it a male without defect. You talk about salt. It's interesting to me that God is looking for offerings without defect.
Yes.
That God's not saying, okay, you're going to make an offering. Just go ahead and take the least valuable thing. No, I want you to bring the perfect thing. The one without defect. It's interesting to me, bro, that, there are some times when I want to give something away and I'll go in my closet and I don't like this shirt because it's got this stain on it. So I bring it to Salvation Army or wherever. Beth goes, let's bring this and we'll give it away. Naturally speaking, we look for things to give away that are worth less to us.
So true.
God is looking for us to bring something that costs us something because it speaks of what's in our heart. That's why he wants our first fruits. He doesn't want our leftovers, not because he's stingy or can't survive without us. He's looking, okay, what's your heart in what you're giving? Oh, this is an old pair of shoes. Let me give them away. Oh, what about giving away like a new pair of shoes? What about changing our mentality, not giving? When we come to God, bro, what if we give him the best part of our day? What if we give him those things that cost us something? I just think that he really responds in a beautiful way to that.
Well, because it speaks of priority. I mean, it's our opportunity to demonstrate to the Lord, this is what I think of you. And if it's, I think of you, you're worth my leftovers. I mean, that says something, And so it's like going on a date and, reheating some pizza, or whatever that the neighbor gave you. I mean, it's like, that doesn't demonstrate any amount of priority.
And it's interesting because over and over and over in these first 3 chapters talking about these offerings, it says a soothing aroma to the Lord. Chapter 1, verse 9. A soothing aroma to the Lord. Verse 13, a soothing aroma. 17, a soothing aroma. Chapter 2, soothing aroma. Over and over and over again through these first 3 chapters, it talks about a soothing aroma. I've been around, I have a dog, and that dog, there are some times when there's an unsoothing aroma emanating from that dog. And, we stick our noses in her. There's nothing worse than stinky, smelly stench. But there's nothing more beautiful than to know that God it's a sweet smelling savor. He's got a sense of smell. And he can look down at us and say, my sweet smelling aroma. Yeah. If we know that God is blessed by our offerings, gosh, we should be giving the best. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, it's so true. And then, so those first three offerings. Then the last two, it gets into these sin offerings. And what I think is fascinating, look at 4 verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, when anyone sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, and then it gives the outlines of what he's supposed to do about that. Well, first of all, the fact that God would say, hey, sin caused a separation between us.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Even if it was unintentional.
Yeah.
But instead of just being like, yeah, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, so when that happens, here's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
You look down even in verse 13, if the whole Israelite community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in the Lord's commands, even though the community is unaware of the matter, when they realize their guilt and the sin they committed becomes known, the assembly must bring, and then he gives instruction.
Wow.
What God is saying is, I want us to be in good relationship.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure you know how we do that.
Yeah.
And so for people that get bogged down on what do we do today, what's not for today, well, of course, Jesus is our sin offering. He is the blood that's applied to the altar, right?
Yeah.
But in this time, this is how God's relating to his people. He just wants them to understand how to do it, which is a very kind and compassionate thing.
Yeah, I love that.
And he's like, and if you don't even realize you've done it,
yeah.
When you do realize it, here's how you make it right.
It's so amazing, bro. I mean, if you've raised kids, you'll hear them say, well, I didn't mean it. Right. Well, you didn't mean it, okay, but there's still, you have to make that right.
You still have to make it right.
Because, you have to make it right. Woe to those of us who have unintentionally sinned, or there may be people hurt that I don't even know about.
Exactly.
And they could come to me and say, you really hurt me. The wrong thing for me to respond would be, well, I didn't mean it. I don't know what you're talking about. Get over it.
Right. Well, that's your problem.
That's your problem. Right. But what if God cares about the things that we didn't even mean to do?
Come on, dude. Yes.
It's like, how differently would the church look if people who had stuff against us that we had no clue of even doing, the humility of God says, okay, get low, take responsibility. For goodness sakes, who cares?
Who cares?
Why can't we just say, please forgive me? I did not mean to do it. I was recently texted, and the text that I received was, wow. It was like very, very accusatory. Almost, it was just, it hurt me. And you know what I wanted to do, bro? I wanted to give this person just a little piece of my mind. Of course. And you know what I felt like the Lord said to do? Don't defend yourself. Apologize and take responsibility. So what I did was, I know I did not do what I was being accused of doing, but this person obviously had something against me. And I just felt like the Lord just said, get low. So and I'm not doing this because I'm such a great guy. I'm doing this because this stuff is ringing true to me in this season of my life.
Man, praise
it's
God.
Like, why can't I just take responsibility for how you feel?
Yeah.
I can't, in other words, take responsibility for how you feel about me.
Yeah.
I am deeply, deeply sorry. If I hurt you, I did not mean to hurt you.
Yeah.
Would you please forgive me? What can anybody say against that? They can either flip you off and say, I'm not forgiving you, you dirty, lousy, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or it's amazing.
Man,
it's amazing. The Bible says a soft word turns away wrath. Yeah. And this is like, okay, for those of us who unintentionally ever hurt people, why can't we man up, woman up, and say, please forgive me? My wife often says, and this might not be original with her, but she says the goal of communicating is not to prove your point, but to hear the other person's heart.
So good.
What if we heard the heart of people who were hurt by us, even if they're viewing that hurt wrongly?
Exactly.
Even if they could be totally and completely misguided. All we have to do is say, will you forgive me? And it's very, very interesting because God, I love that you're talking about this, bro, because there's a lot of unintended hurt.
Sure.
And, for men and women who would take responsibility and get low. We've got a couple minutes, just close us out.
I've heard it said that pride will always ask the question in a relationship, what is right or who is right?
Yeah.
Humility will always ask the question, what is right?
Oh, wait. Say that again. Pride
will always ask the question, who is right?
Who is right?
Humility will ask the question, what is right?
Oh my gosh, bro, that's really good.
And so let's say someone has taken offense and you did hurt them and you didn't even realize, you didn't intend to.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about the scripture. It says, and when you realize it, you're not accountable for, because you don't know. God's not even holding the people accountable until they know.
Yeah.
But then when they know, he's like, then here's what you do.
I love it, dude.
And you could say, well, I don't have to do that because I didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah.
You're wrong. Well, it's not about who's right. What is right?
Yeah.
Restoring relationship is right.
Restoring relationship.
And that's what God is saying.
Yeah.
I want us to be in right relationship.
I love it.
You may not even have known you did it.
Yeah.
That's okay. When you realize it, here's what we do to make it right.
Right.
And that's the heart of our Father. So again, if you can look at some of these Old Testament passages, trying to learn the character of our God and hear his heart, it will make so much more sense to you than you trying to figure out and do the math, which I'm kind of a nerd. I enjoy learning about why things mean certain things, but God's not going to give me a pop quiz when I see him in heaven.
Yeah.
It's going to be, did you take on my character?
Yeah, I love it.
Did you have my heart? And that's what we're trying to get.
And it's all for the purpose of dwelling with him in the tabernacle and forever. Friends, thanks for joining us. We're going to plow our way through the book of Leviticus. I pray that these words are life-giving and encouraging to you. And I also want to encourage you, if you have any thought that you may have hurt somebody and it was totally and completely unintentional, make it right this week. Go to the person. God not only wants our relationship with him restored, he wants our relationship with one another restored. I love you. I bless you. If today's podcast has been a blessing for you, let us know. Shoot me a note, scott@togetherforisrael.org. Download our app, sign up for our YouTube page. We love being in touch with you. Have a great week. See you next week.